What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to JJD TV. I'm your host, Josh. We have a very special episode today. We sat down and interviewed Hercules Gomez from ESPN and Football Americas. With the rise of Canadian soccer, I think it was important to basically see that history still has a factor. Yes, I think that we're the best in the region right now, but there's a long road we have to go on. A lot of consistency is going to be the key word of this interview. So we've got Herc here to basically take a look at the perspective of the rise of Canadian soccer throughout the US, Mexico, and try to determine who's the kings of CONCACAF, who's the best in the region right now, and all that good stuff. So I'm a big fan of his show over at Football Americas. I definitely recommend you guys checking it out. And hopefully you guys will enjoy this interview. Be sure to drop a like, drop a sub, and let's get into the interview now. All right, guys, so we've been very lucky today to be joined by Hercules Gomez. Some of you guys may know him from Football Americas. That's certainly where I do, but he did play for a bunch of teams in Major League Soccer, Liga MX. I'm rocking right there. Rocking one right here, the TFC. I was trying to wear a Tigres kit, but I couldn't get to it. But Herc, I appreciate you coming on today. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, guys, if you guys can't tell by the title, we're going to basically use Herc here to kind of talk about, yes, the rise of the Canadian national team, but also kind of see how they're perceived among the best in CONCACAF, specifically around the US and Mexico. So Herc, my very first question for you is exactly that, but more on the fan side. How is Canada and the rise of the Canadian national team perceived in the US perspective and the Mexican perspective among the fans?
It's interesting because if you go back historically, Canada has not been a very strong nation in CONCACAF. I think you've got to go back to the early 1900s. No, I'm sorry, to the 1990s. Was it a Gold Cup they won?
2000 Gold Cup.
2000 Gold Cup. There we go. That's about the rise of the Canadian national team, or to the extent of it that Mexican fans or U.S. men's national team fans have really known them for. And then along the lines, you had some very good players. Guzman, De Rosario, Will Johnson, Atiba Hutchins, just different types of players coming throughout the system that were selected, few and far between. And then all of a sudden you have an Alphonso Davies, like an actual world talent, like an actual great player in CONCACAF who establishes himself amongst the world's elite. And that kind of starts opening some eyes. And at least from my perspective, I got the opportunity to play for Toronto FC, and I got to see Canadian soccer up front. The culture, which is very much immersed in a semi-European style. Living in Toronto, you had, as much of a footballing culture around the city that I've experienced in an MLS environment. So that really opened my eyes. But in general, it's not perceived like to be a footballing nation. Not that the United States is, but generally, since the early 2000s, the U.S. has been a big player in CONCACAF. If you look at the World Cup qualifying cycles, 2000, it was up like 13 out of 16 points in the first half, and then bottled it in the second. They should have won that cycle. They didn't. But every cycle since, except the 2018 cycle, 2018 cycle, they've won. It's been a team that's competed. And Mexico historically has been the giant of CONCACAF. Results, money, players abroad, talent, trophies. Those are pretty much the only two players within CONCACAF. And Costa Rica would make a run in a World Cup, and it opened some eyes, Keylor Navas and et cetera. But it's generally been these two countries as of late. And all of a sudden, here comes Canada. A very disciplined, honest, hardworking team, difficult to break down, but with a few playmakers, like very, very dangerous. And I think it's opened some eyes. And I want to say it shouldn't be a surprise. First half of the octagonal, I was on Mexican TV. I was on ESPN Deportes in Mexico, and I was doing these, string of shows. And I remember saying, they asked me, all right, who's been your best team? Who's been your best coach? And I said, Canada, John Herdman. And it was kind of like a laugh. And all right. You're supposed to say Mexico, you're supposed to say the U.S., one of the two. How can it be Canada? I'm like, well, look what they've done. Look at how they're playing. Look how difficult they are. Look who's punching above their weight class, who's actually playing well. This type of thing. So I think it's opening eyes. It's not been historically a footballing nation within CONCACAF that you would say is a powerhouse, but with a young difficult to break down team and the playmakers they have. I mean, you could easily say that right now Canada has the best coach in CONCACAF. You could easily say that Canada has the best player in CONCACAF in Alphonso Davies. You could easily say that they may have the best 9 in CONCACAF and Jonathan David, and then the best second 9 in CONCACAF and Kyle Larin. So it's, it's very interesting when you look at how Canada has progressed and how people are taking them seriously now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm listening to Football Americas. I know you've talked up Canada quite a bit, so I know that you've been on the train. Look at that. Oh, and he comes in clutch with So I should have wore the Tigres kit. I'm pretty disappointed, but that's an excellent share. But no, I mean, listening to you on Football Americas, you've talked up the Canadian national team for a while. I mean, and the results show that they've hit all the right pieces at the right time. But again, for me starting this channel and being kind of involved with the Canadian side of things, there's a lot of new fans out there right now. And I don't want to use this example. I don't love it because, I mean, people think of Canada, they think of hockey. But I'm just going to throw an example out there. It's kind of like, in my eyes, Norway goes in and then takes down Canada and the United States in hockey. That's kind of what this seems like, because I'm 25 years old and I followed the Canadian national team my entire life. And I couldn't even dreamt of this type of success so far, and especially in when it matters the most, World Cup qualifying.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at it from at least an American perspective, for a lot of U.S. men's national team fans that have been paying attention to the landscape for quite some time, is they're doing it in the way the U.S. men's national team rose in the early 2000s. The Bruce Arena teams, the Bob Bradley teams, being very difficult to play against, being a team that had just this incredible spirit with a few very talented players that could change games. That's how the U.S. men's national team came to be a player in CONCACAF. That's how they took down Mexico in Gold Cups. That's how they took down Mexico in a World Cup. This is scary for Mexico because they've already seen it play out once. This is scary for the U.S. men's national team because this is supposed to be their golden generation. And here comes this other generation. And they're getting results. And maybe they're not as young, and maybe their players aren't playing in the leagues or the teams that the U.S. men's national team golden generation are playing in. But they're doing what matters the most in this region. And they're doing it in an unapologetic way. And what I mean about that is Mexico changes who they are depending on the rival, and a lot of things change with that. The United States men's national team as well, the road form, the home form, who they are, the DNA. They still have these identity issues. Canada does not have that. Like, every single player in that system knows exactly what John Herman wants out of them. They know exactly who they are. They know that if we're going to play Mexico, let's not sit back. We're going to go toe-to-toe. That we can deal with them because our transition game is so strong, because physically we will overpower them in the midfield. If they play against the United States men's national team, give them the ball. They think they're better than they are. Let's play with them in transition. And they hurt you in multiple ways. So I think that's scary for both fan bases.
It absolutely is. And that was like from the fan perspective. So now I just kind of want to veer over to the media perspective a little bit, just because, again, leading up to this World Cup qualifying, I had my hopes because I was watching them from the beginning and seeing how much better this team is, and some of the stars stepping up like Tajon Buchanan. And obviously the biggest thing is John Herman has this group buying in, and he can send every player out on that pitch, ask them to do a job, and they will get the job done. And seeing the results follow suit has just been absolutely incredible. So I want to kind of turn it to the media a little bit and ask you a specific question, because again, being Canadian and just being very, very excited seeing us win against Mexico and win against the US, I want to see not the criticism, because again, that kind of says that Canada didn't deserve it, but what was the backlash like, or what was said in the media after the loss against Mexico in the US, and how did they compare? Which one, I guess, took more criticism with the loss to the rise of the Canadian national team?
Well, the funny thing is, if you look at the Mexico loss to Canada, it came at the back of the U.S. men's national team victory over Mexico. So that was coupled as a bad window. That was coupled as the third defeat versus the United States men's national team in a calendar year. So it kind of got swept under the rug what happened in Edmonton. They took us to the cold. We weren't confident. We didn't play well. When we finally did play well, time ran out. We had them on the ropes. They held on to the victory type of deal. I think that gets kind of diluted by what happened Mexico versus the U.S. men's national team in Cincinnati, which is a shame because it's the second time that Canada took points off of Mexico. It's the only team in CONCACAF to ever take points off of both Mexico and the U.S. at home in Azteca and wherever they're playing, excuse me, in the United States. So it's something to be said about that. It gets swept under the rug a bit. And unfortunately, when the U.S. lost to Canada, it was more about what Greg Berhalter and the U.S. men's national team didn't do than what Canada did. I had no doubt in my mind that Canada would sit back in a low block and give the initiative, and I shouldn't say initiative, give the ball, because the initiative was Canada's, the Canadian national team, excuse me, and let them come to Canada and then exploit the space behind in transition. No doubt in my mind about that. So when it happened, it was more like, why didn't Greg Berhalter see this? Why do our players play this way? What didn't we do right? Instead of Canada just ate your lunch again, Excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's interesting just because, again, thinking of the rise of the sport in the U.S., which has, you're a big part of it. You're part of the media there. And like you said, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier, the golden generation. I found that very interesting because when I think back and take a look at what Mexico has achieved, and in my eyes growing up, and again, this is just my perspective, I always kind of saw Mexico as the kings of CONCACAF. But then seeing what the U.S. have done, they've always competed, and there's no questioning that. So I thought when Canada finally beat Mexico that I guess it would all hell would break loose. That's what my personal opinion was. But then at the same time,
not so much for Canada right now. I think they're so focused on we've lost to the United States men's national team 3 times in a calendar year. We've lost 2 trophies in one summer. Their players are going to Europe at such a crazy rate, and our players are staying in Liga MX. They're more focused on that than Canada, which is a great thing for Canada because that's what you want. Like, let these two worry about each other. You keep doing what you're doing. Right now, if there's a team poised to make a run in Qatar, it's probably best suited to be Canada because of the way they play, because of their style, because of their identity, because they know who they are, because oftentimes in these tournaments, it's 3, 4, 5 days max in between games, and fitness is an issue, and style of play. And you've seen recently, 2018 World Cup Russia, the type of teams that do well. France started off against New Zealand, didn't do so great. But they got stronger as the tournament went on, and their transition game was just better suited for what today's game is, this tournament style play. And I think Canada has that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's on full display considering that there's months in between. Each little window is almost like a mini tournament. And Canada definitely seems like they're up to the task, and they have a consistent and an effective game plan going in. But you mentioned getting something shoved under the rug with the loss to Canada. So that kind of leads into my next question for you. And that's, do Mexico and the US see Canada as equals, or do they kind of see this as no? Do they see this as short-term success for Canada? Do they think
I don't know about short-term success, but it's definitely recency bias, right? They're doing it right now. And we go through this all the time on the show of El Gigante de CONCACAF, the CONCACAF giant. There comes a lot with being the CONCACAF giant, and it's not just play today. It's your history. It's your record. It's what have you done? It's how have you built? It's what can you do? All these different things. And Canada right now, in the eyes of both punditry bases, is doing great things, but still isn't the giant of CONCACAF. And Mexico will never acknowledge Canada as being a giant of CONCACAF. They don't acknowledge the United States men's national team, even though they've had this crazy tug of war of results last 2+ decades. So it comes with the territory. And listen, Canada is in the conversation now, but in order to really be immersed in it, you have to stay in it, and that's going to be a challenge.
Yep, and that's an excellent question. Now, on Twitter, it's always fun watching backlash. It's just, you give some people an opportunity to tweet whatever they want, and it's fun. But I put a tweet out a little while ago just to kind of poke the bear and pull a good old Filippo, shout out to tactical manager. And I kind of mentioned around the king of CONCACAF. Now, I in no way whatsoever think Canada is the king of CONCACAF, because I believe success continuously in CONCACAF is a massive part of that, as well as a World Cup one. But I believe that they're kings of CONCACAF at the moment. So I'm just kind of turning it over
They're
to you.
the best in CONCACAF.
The best in CONCACAF. The best in CONCACAF.
And that's irrefutable. I mean,
Yeah.
you could just look at the record and say, well, they're undefeated right now. I think only one other team has done that, and that's Mexico in the 2000, I don't even know when, cycle, early 2000s. But that's the only other team that's gone undefeated in World Cup qualifying, and that was a hexagonal. There are more games now. So Canada had to do that with more games.
And that's kind of leading into the question, because what they're doing right now, and especially let's just assume maybe, and I'm not saying they will, but let's just assume they finish undefeated. So that's a huge accomplishment. Now, when we go back to Kings of CONCACAF and looking back at Mexico and US did, obviously with that quarterfinal appearance being so, I think the difference maker, and I've heard you talk about it a little bit, what would it take for Canada to be kind of spiral up a little bit? Now, if in this upcoming World Cup, would making it to the quarterfinals, for example, really be okay? This is a sleeping giant that is entering the frame of conversation between the other two.
Without a doubt. I mean, quarterfinal appearance, without a doubt, you do something that not even Mexico has done in the modern era. Mexico is that fifth game, el quinto partido, that quarterfinal. Costa Rica has gotten there. They did it in a group of death, and they got there. The United States men's national team got there, and they did it by beating Mexico. So to legitimately be a contender in CONCACAF, if Canada can go to a quarterfinal or more, it would cement itself as one of the premier nations in CONCACAF. But then it's about maintaining, and that's been the issue. That's the biggest, I would say, knock on the United States men's national team with Mexican pundits. It's like, we're historic. We've not only done this, but we continue to do this. And U.S. men's national team pundits or fans would point out to the record since 2000, and they still have a hard time accepting that. So Canada will go through the same thing. But regardless, giant of CONCACAF or not, I mean, you're doing something right now that came out of nowhere, at least to a lot of different people. You could say, well, Canada and the rise of the Canadian national team this has been in the works for quite some time. The Jonathan Osorios, the Kyle Larens, the Jonathan Davids, the Estaquios, the Richie Lareyes, whatever you want, Miller, this has been going on for a while. It's just coming together now. Well, it needs to continue if you want to be in that conversation.
And I absolutely agree. And I thought it was just very interesting looking back, because I kind of I get what you're saying, that it was coming together. But even looking back when we beat the US 2-0 and then got followed up with that 4-1 loss in the Nations League, that team to me still didn't scream someone that was going to compete and do what they did today. Right. I just feel like all the pieces kind of came together at the right time under the right management, and they're soaring and they're hitting, honestly, heights that I never thought they were. So I just kind of want to get your personal opinion on how do you view the longevity of the Canadian men's national team? Do you think that this is something that they can continuously do, or do you think this is kind of a high streak for them, kind of similar to?
No, it's impossible to say that, Josh, because form is so relative. If you look at one of the greatest U.S. men's national team achievements of the World Cup was the 2002 World Cup. They knocked Mexico out to go to a quarterfinal, and then honestly, they probably should have. If VAR was around, they probably would have beat Germany. It's a reality. Probably would have gone to a semifinal. But people forget, Bruce Arena and the U.S. men's national team stumbled their way into that World Cup. They bottled in the second half of that World Cup qualifying. Then they got to the World Cup, and they went 1-1-1 in group play. Literally, they beat Portugal in this crazy game where Portugal is one of the favorites in the tournament. And then it was like, that's it. 1-1-1. It was like the CONCACAF special, what you would do in a World Cup. And they advanced and got to play Mexico, a team they know in their region, a team they've already beat in their region, had that faith and played them the way they knew Mexico would play, and they can hurt them, and advanced. And that grew a sense of belief, and it inspired millions. And this is what Canada needs to do to keep growing as a footballing nation within CONCACAF and then around the world. When I'm 18 years old and I see Landon Donovan and DeMarcus Beasley playing in a World Cup quarterfinal against Mexico, it opens my eyes. I want to be that. I want to do that. And then I'm on the national team later. So on Football Americas, we interviewed Matt Turner not too long ago, and first interview we did with him, and he was talking about how the 2010 World Cup inspired him. That made him want to be a professional footballer. That was my World Cup. That's how it goes. Like Alfonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, Estacio, Osorio, all these players are going to be at a World Cup, and there's going to be some 10-year-old Canadian kid who's going to say, holy shit, I can be there too. And that's going to inspire him, his buddies, anybody in the academy, coaches to be better, and it's going to keep growing from there. Literally that mediocre group play that got them to play against Mexico in a second-round game to go to a quarterfinal, you could say is the pivotal point in U.S. soccer. So now Canada here is no program historically, doing well in CONCACAF, with the opportunity to go to a World Cup in Qatar, could find itself in a group where they could potentially get out and make a run. And once you're in a tournament, I don't care what the level is, it's about belief. And if they can make a run in a country so big like Canada, it could be the first step to actually being a powerhouse.
I agree with you 100%. I think that what we're doing now is special, and it's starting to pick up on media coverage, which is incredible because this is a sport. I live in a town of 1,000 people. I've said this on the channel a ton of times. In Canada, my football talk, my soccer talk, it's few and far between. So that's why using the channel is a lot of fun and talking with you is a lot of fun. But I personally think that a World Cup could be a game changer, especially that we're 99.9% qualified, but actually making a run, like you said, not going 0-3, which, we showed up it is, to push something on, to get the excitement, and then to kind of rejuvenate that next generation. And I like exactly what you said, and I think it's a big opportunity with also hosting in 2026. So it's the right time. But I like what you said too about that next generation, but I'm going to veer a little bit kind of toward the dual national. I mentioned it to you when I messaged you on Twitter, and that is Marcelo Flores. Now, not that he needs any inspiration. I mean, we know, but I just kind of want to see for you, what would be some of the cons and some of the pros between that decision of him? Now, I personally think he's leaning towards Mexico. That's just me. But a player like him who's got so much success, what would it take for Canada to convince a player like him, a really sought after player, to drop Mexico and go and look in the direction of this Canadian national team?
I don't know if they can. It's difficult because you have to know the individual. I will say, if you're a Mexican national team player, that's a huge marketing machine. People think like the U.S. has a marketing machine. Like Mexico has an unbelievable marketing machine and unbelievable love and appreciation for their players. And they can package and sell those players. So if I had to be brutally honest, he's worth more as a Mexican national team player. And I think his father knows that. I think he's realized that now that he's been in that camp and he's seen kind of like everything that embodies the atmosphere that comes with being part of the Mexican national team, that huge driver. So that's going to be very difficult to play against. And the fact that Mexico historically is a bigger team. Now, who is he as a person? Who is he as a footballer? Where does he see the program going, et cetera? These are things that could potentially play in Canada's favor, because everything I know of him, Mexican parents, fully immersed in English culture, very little Spanish. Not that you need Spanish to feel Mexican, but he's definitely, I guess, sometimes may feel as a outsider within that team. Now things are changing. Julian Araujo, he's a player, Mexican player as well, U.S. men's national team target is at one point as well. Very little Spanish, fully immersed in the Mexican culture. So things are changing. Efrain Alvarez, Mexican-American. David Ochoa, Mexican-American. Things are changing a bit, but not quite. This is still the Mexican national team. It's still very much a, I want to say, closed culture in some ways, if you will. Not a lot of diversity within Mexico, the country. So those are some things that Canada can take advantage of. But purely from a footballing sense, if they've gotten to him at this point, and everything that I see from him and his social media and his father is that they're leaning towards Mexico.
And I think I heard it, was it on one of your recent shows that he came in with like a Mexican style boot? Like cleats. Yeah.
So don't read too much into that, because who's the Mexican kit sponsor? It's Adidas. So
Yeah.
that's his sponsor. So, that definitely plays differently.
Yeah, no, and I agree, and I've said a lot of times because one of the common questions I get when I do live streams and talking with people is how close is Marcelo Flores to making a decision? How close is he to Canada? And again, I don't know Marcelo Flores whatsoever, but just from what I understand from him, what I hear, I just feel like it'd be a tough task to pull him away. But I think it's still a statement to show that Canada's at least in the conversation. He's had his
Absolutely.
head turned.
I wouldn't say at least. They're definitely. I think they were the main driver for a while. They called them into the preliminary roster for the Gold Cup, so they were ahead of Mexico in that sense. Mexico debuted them, and that's a huge carrot on a stick. For any player when that national team is dangled in front of you.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to wait and see. But it's a good thing to see, regardless of because not only Marcelo. I just wanted to ask Marcelo because I don't remember the last situation where a player had the option between Canada and Mexico. You usually see the Mexico-US split, so I thought it was a very interesting one. Yeah. But we have a couple more questions for you, Herc, before we let you go. The one, because I'm a big fan of Football Americas, and I really enjoy listening to. I think you guys did an incredible job there, even coming from a Canadian. So I definitely recommend people checking it out. So I just want to get a look to at our region because CONCACAF has got a checkered history, just to say the least. It's an interesting region to follow. But how important is it for other countries besides Mexico and US to step up? I mean, Costa Rica we talked about with their World Cup campaign. It was really impressive. I mean, as a North American, I was cheering them on. I was hoping they could do the upset.
Yeah.
And now Canada with the rise. How's important for it? And even maybe Jamaica down the line with their dual national. How important is it for for the quality of the level just to be rising a little bit?
It's probably the most important thing. That's why you hear so many Mexican pundits talk about, well, we need to get out of these CONCACAF tournaments. We need to go to Libertadores in South America. We need to go and participate more in Copa America. They're not doing it because they think it's cool. They're doing it because they think that'll raise the level. Because they think historically the level has been poor within CONCACAF. I mean, it used to be like Mexico would play countries and win 7-0, 8-0, and the gap is closed, but they're still winning these games fairly easy. They're still having few and far between the times that they're, actually put up against the wall. And I know people could point to their record overall in the World Cup and World Cup qualifying over the years and be like, whoa, hold on a second. But it's a reality. When you look at where the money is, when you look at, who CONCACAF in general wants to deal with. I'm talking about at a federation level, who they want to deal with because the money's there. It's Mexico, it's the US, and if Jamaica's better with all the dual nationals, if Canada's a better team, if El Salvador with Hugo Perez picks up, if Panama can be better, Costa Rica could find a way to I guess close the gap between that older golden generation that's very mature now and bring in young players. It's going to make every game mean something. The way CONMEBOL does, the way their World Cup qualifying means something, the way how difficult it is, and it's going to raise the level by osmosis. But until that happens, we're going to keep having these conversations of Mexican clubs don't want to play CCL because they always win CCL. They're starting to see like no value in it. Mexican clubs or national team wants to go play in Copa America because they want to prove themselves. They want to test themselves. There's a reason this continually happens. It's because within this region, the level hasn't been quite great.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we've seen peaks of it. We're hoping to see a little bit more consistency. I think that was one of the key words that you had to say, whether Canada can do it, Jamaica can do it. Only time will tell, but hopefully it's a nice little step in the right direction. But Herc, we got the final question of the day, and this is the one where I'm curious to see what you're going to say. You've kind of already alluded to it. You said, and you can correct me if you're wrong, the best side in the region right now is Canada. Is that you agree on that?
Yes. It might not be the most talented side. It might not be the team with the highest ceiling, but irrefutably the best has been Canada.
And now your final question. Who in your eyes is the king of CONCACAF?
So I always laugh about this question, and I've gone on national television in multiple languages, and I've said it. It's like Smurfs arguing over who's taller, and that's a reality. CONCACAF is not a powerhouse at the world level. So when other countries, proper footballing nations, hear this, they must turn around and laugh. But given that, I honestly still think Mexico, because top CONCACAF embodies history, embodies culture, embodies actual level, embodies ceiling, embodies so many different things. I still think they are top dog in the region. But it's like a 45-55 split between them and the U.S. And if Mexico falters, if the U.S. blows up, if Canada stays on this trajectory, it's going to be a very interesting 2026 because all three are hosts.
Yeah. No, that's good. I thought you were going to lean towards Mexico just because of that, but they definitely need that quarterfinal berth in the World Cup. But Herc, I really appreciate you coming on today. I hopefully a lot of the newer soccer fans in Canada have learned a little bit too around it. And Twitter can be fun. So now there's a little bit of perspective on who is the giants of CONCACAF. But Herc, I don't know if you want to let everyone know where they can find you. I heard that you created your own YouTube channel as well, so you can plug that in there.
I'm so new at this YouTube channel. I don't even know the YouTube name, but the links, you could find me at Hercules with a ZG on Twitter, Instagram, same at Hercules G, Facebook, all that stuff. You could find me tied into Twitter, all my links and whatnot, and I'm usually on there. And you can listen to the show, Football Americas, because it's probably geo-blocked in Canada as the actual ESPN Plus show, but you can listen to the podcast version on the ESPN FC podcast feed, or see the clips that we post on ESPN FC YouTube or my own channel. And if you're lucky enough to have ESPN Plus, please check out the show. We're very proud of it. We work very hard at it. And, I think it's a good show. So hopefully people can check it out.
Yeah, it definitely is. I listen to it on ESPN FC. I'm geo-blocked Canadian, I know, but I wish I could have a little more access. But awesome, Herc. I appreciate it. We'll have all his links below in the description anyway. So Herc, I appreciate my man. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks a lot, Josh.